Good evening, my friends. Tonight, we journey back to the ancient and mysterious East to discover and gently experience the ancient Eastern world. If you truly enjoy these calm stories, feel free to like and subscribe, only if it feels right in your heart. I'd love to see in the comments where you are listening from and what time the night has reached you. Now, dim the lights. As the distant bell echoes, let it lead you gently into tonight's story. Tonight we are going much further back than usual. Not hundreds of years, thousands, about 2,500 to be more or less precise. You are standing outside a palace. Not the forbidden city, something older, rougher, more dangerous. A nobleman's compound in the state of Jin during the spring and autumn period. The era when China was not one country, but many a constellation of rival kingdoms, all nominally loyal to the Zhou king, all quietly sharpening their knives. You are wearing wide-sleeved robes. The fabric is heavier than you expected. The air smells of roasting meat and something herbal, sharp and clean, like crushed leaves. People stream past you toward the entrance. Torchlight flickers on bronze fittings and lacquered wood. You join the flow. You have, it seems, been invited to a feast. There is only one problem. You don't know a single rule. You don't recognize the food. You can't read the room. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a small voice reminds you, in this era, sitting in the wrong seat or eating the wrong dish is not a social embarrassment. It is a punishable offense. So, let's go slowly. Let's learn as we eat. You step inside. The hall is larger than you imagined. Down the center, a row of bronze lamps stands tall, branching, each holding a small flame. The firelight sways and stretches every shadow. The first thing you notice, there is no table, not one large table anyway. Instead, each guest sits behind a small, low stand and Angie barely knee-high. The surface holds a few dishes. The guests kneel on woven mats spread across the floor. You copy the person beside you and lower yourself down. Your knees touch the mat. A tingling numbness begins immediately. You realize, with quiet alarm, that you will be in this position for the entire meal. But you don't have long to worry about your legs, because the servants have begun placing things on your little stand. The first dish is a small ceramic bowl of rice. You lean in. The grains are shorter and rounder than what you're used to. They carry a faint sheen. The smell is mild and clean, not the fragrance of northeastern Chinese rice or Thai jasmine. Something older. Something you've never encountered. This is Dao rice, and on a table in the spring and autumn period, it is not ordinary food. In our time, rice is everywhere. You eat it without thinking. But 25 centuries ago, white rice on your plate meant you were standing very near the top of the social pyramid. The common people below you ate rough, unpolished grains, shuji, coarse millets with a gritty texture and a faintly bitter edge. and below them the laborers and the poor ate whatever they could find. Wild greens, bark, whatever the season offered and hunger demanded. How widely rice was cultivated at this time is still debated. Some scholars believe large-scale rice farming was limited to the Yangtze Valley and regions south of the Huai River. Northern nobles who wanted rice had to import it over long distances. Other scholars, pointing to rice remains found in aristocratic tombs along the Yellow River, argue that northern demand for rice may have been larger than we assume. Either way, the bowl in front of you is a statement of status, quiet, white, and unmistakable. You reach toward it, and a soft cough stops you. The man beside you, middle-aged, wearing a dark blue-green robe, gives a slight shake of his head. His eyes flick toward the center of the hall. Of course, you must wait for the host. The figure seated at the central, largest mat wears robes embroidered with intricate patterns. A tall ceremonial cap. He lifts his rice bowl with unhurried grace. 3 fingers of his right hand pinch a small mound of rice. He places it in his mouth, chews slowly. Only then does the hall come alive with the quiet sounds of eating. You pinch a bit of rice and bring it to your lips. The texture is better than you feared. Not as soft as modern rice, no, but not unpleasant. The grains carry a mild sweetness, slightly sticky, but not glutinous, something between chewy and tender. You eat with your hands. Everyone eats with their hands. While you chew, you notice the other dishes on your stand. One small plate holds something yellowish, a flat cake made from some kind of grain, steamed or pressed. Another holds a grayish-brown paste, giving off a smell you can't quite place. A young man seated on your other side leans over and whispers helpfully, "That's Ji Bing, and that one is Shu Jian." Ji Bing millet cake. Ji is a type of grain close to what we'd call foxtail millet. In the spring and autumn period, it was the most common crop in the north. How important was it? Consider this. The word Sheiji, which means nation or state, is composed of 2 characters. She refers to the god of the earth. Ji refers to the god of grain. When the ancients spoke of their country, they named it after soil and millet. That tells you something about what mattered most. On a noble's table, though, millet sits a step below rice and wheat. It is the reliable option, always available, never glamorous, like a dependable weeknight dinner when you're saving the good ingredients for guests. The shu jian, the gray paste, is a porridge made from soybeans. You try a spoonful. It's bland, a little beany. Someone has added an herb that softens the raw edge, but the flavor remains quiet and plain. Soybeans, in this era, are an important food, cheap, high-yielding, rich in protein. For ordinary families, they're a critical source of nourishment. Nobles eat soybean dishes too, partly from tradition, partly because it's considered good for the body. But among the upper classes, soy carries a faint association with poverty. If a noble household eats soybeans at every meal, people will talk. It means things are not going well. You're still contemplating the bean porridge when a smell reaches you. Meat, rich, slow-cooked, unmistakable. You look up. Several strong servants are carrying an enormous bronze vessel into the center of the hall. 3 legs, 2 handles. The surface is covered with intricate carved patterns, spirals, animal faces, cloud motifs. Firelight catches the green-tinged metal. Steam rises from the opening, and with it, that smell. Deep, savory, commanding. This is a ding. You stare at it, and a question forms. That bowl of rice you just ate, were you allowed to eat it? Not because it tasted wrong, because you dimly remember that in this era, food is governed by strict hierarchies. Eating something above your station is not simply bad manners. It is jianue, overstepping, a serious charge in a time when the old ritual order still holds most of its weight. You review the evidence. Your robes look expensive. You're seated in a respectable position, middle of the hall, slightly toward the front. Whoever you are in this story, you appear to be someone of rank. In truth, grains in this period are sorted into tiers. At the top, Dao rice and my wheat and barley. Both are relatively scarce, labor-intensive to grow, and expensive. Only nobles eat them regularly. In the middle, shu glutinous millet, often used for cakes and wine, and ji, the everyday foxtail millet. These are more affordable. Nobles eat them. Prosperous commoners can manage them, but for the poor, even millet is a luxury. At the bottom, shu soybeans. Nutritious, yes, but in the social imagination, beans are what you eat when you have nothing else. The exact rules vary from state to state. In Chi, or Lu, near the coast and river networks, rice is more accessible. In landlocked Jin or Chin, rice is genuinely rare, and even mid-ranking nobles eat millet most days. You glance down at your half-finished bowl of white rice and relax slightly. You seem to be in the clear. The man in the blue-green robe, let's call him the quiet gentleman, is adding something to his rice from a small container, white powder. His movements are precise, almost ceremonial. It's salt. In our world, salt costs almost nothing. A few coins for a bag that lasts months. But in the spring and autumn period, salt is precious. Inland communities depend on supplies transported from coastal salt flats or from brine wells, long, expensive journeys. Many farming families go an entire year eating food with no seasoning at all. A pinch of salt at the New Year festival is a small luxury. And like everything else on a noble's table, salt has grades. The finest is Haiyan sea salt white, fine-grained, shipped from the Bohai coast. Below that, Jingyan well salt and Chiyan lake salt from the salt wells of Shu or the salt ponds of Shanxi. Yellowish, slightly gritty. At the bottom, Yanyan rock salt mined directly, requiring rough processing before use. The salt the quiet gentleman is sprinkling into his bowl is very white, very fine. This banquet, it seems, spares no expense. Is this your first time at a Zhao family feast? The young man on your other side asks cheerfully. Zhao, your pulse quickens. The Zhao clan, one of the most powerful families in the state of Jin, the family that will eventually, along with the Han and Wei clans, carve Jin into 3 separate kingdoms, a family whose name will echo through history. You nod vaguely, hoping silence will be mistaken for dignity. The hall goes quiet. A man stands beside the great Ding. He wears rough cloth, but at his waist hangs a jade pendant, a sign of status that contradicts his plain clothing. That is the Paoran, the young man whispers. The Zhao family's head chef, brought from Lu, they say, supposedly trained by a cook from one of the great houses there. Paoran, the cook. In this era, a skilled Paoran commands real respect. Cooking is not merely a trade. It intersects with ritual, with ceremony, with medicine, with politics. A great chef might be courted by noble families across several states. The compensation can exceed that of minor officials. The Paoran dips a long bronze ladle into the Ding and stirs. Steam billows. The meat smell intensifies. Your stomach growls. You hope no one heard. The quiet gentleman clears his throat softly and nods toward the host's seat. The head of the Zhao family is receiving the first portion, a large cut of meat, bone in, glistening with fat. He takes the plate, but does not eat. Instead, he raises it above his head and bows toward the north wall of the hall. He is offering it to the ancestors. In this period, no formal banquet begins without this gesture. The meaning is plain. Everything we enjoy, we owe to those who came before us. The ancestors taste first, the living eat second. The ritual complete, the host begins to cut his meat. The servants move through the hall, distributing portions from the Ding. You notice immediately that the portions are not equal. Guests near the front, seated closest to the host, receive larger, better cuts. Those further back receive smaller pieces. Some get only scraps. Your position earns you a mid-sized cut. Not the finest, but far from the worst. You look at the meat on your plate. The grain of the muscle looks like lamb. The surface is coated in a dark sauce, savory, fragrant, a little smoky. You lift it to your nose. Lamb. Unmistakably. That particular muskiness. But something has been done to tame it, a spice, an herb, something that turns the sharpness into complexity. You bite. Tender. Cooked just long enough. The seasoning is salty, with a thread of sweetness underneath, and a warm, slightly numbing note you can't identify. Something like Sichuan peppercorn, but not quite. The Zhao family's Fei Gao is excellent, the young man says contentedly. Fei Gao, a young fattened lamb. In the spring and autumn period, lamb is the most common high-status meat on noble tables. It occupies roughly the position that a good steak holds in the modern imagination. Respectable, presentable, appropriate for guests, but not all meat is available to all people. You've probably heard of the concept of Ding the 9 cauldrons. Legend says the great Yu cast 9 bronze ding, representing the 9 provinces of the realm. These became symbols of kingship. Whoever possessed the 9 ding ruled the world. In everyday life, the number of ding a person was entitled to use followed a rigid hierarchy. The Son of Heaven, the Zhou King, used 9. A Zhu Ho, a regional lord, used 7. A Qingdafu, a high minister, used 5. A Shi, a lower-ranking gentleman, used 3, or 1. More ding meant more kinds of meat you could serve. The king's 9 ding held beef, lamb, pork, fish, dried meat, intestines, stomach, skin, and fresh fish. A lord's 7 held fewer varieties, a minister's 5 fewer still, and one meat stood above all others, Niu beef. In this era, cattle are working animals. They plow fields, they pull carts. Slaughtering an ox requires special permission. Only the most solemn ritual occasions, sacrificing to heaven, honoring the royal ancestors, justify killing a cow. And only the Son of Heaven or a lord with specific authorization may eat beef. Pork occupies an interesting middle position. It is eaten. It appears in rituals. But raising pigs is considered humble work, done by the lower classes. So pork carries a faint whiff of ordinariness. No one would criticize you for serving it. But if you hosted a banquet with pork and no lamb, eyebrows would rise. You'd chew your lamb and look around. Every guest, it seems, is eating lamb tonight. The Zhao family has set a generous table, but not an extravagant one. No beef. This is a feast that knows its place. You finish the meat. A trace of sauce remains on the plate. You're wondering whether it would be acceptable to scoop it up with rice when the quiet gentleman speaks. Have you ever tasted the fish of Qi's eastern sea? You shake your head. He sighs, softly. Qi sits on the coast. Fish, shrimp, crab, shellfish, they have everything. Their nobles eat seafood at nearly every meal. The flavors are nothing like what we have here in Jin. He's right. In this period, the dietary customs of different states vary enormously. Qi, on the Shandong Peninsula, has access to the ocean. Its nobles are famously fond of seafood. Duke Huan of Qi, one of the great hegemons of the era, is said to have been particularly devoted to a type of clam called Qingge, and to abalone from the Bohai Sea. Inland Jin has no such luxury. Protein here comes from livestock and freshwater fish. Occasionally a merchant brings salted ocean fish from the east, but the price is steep. Only the wealthiest families indulge. You're still thinking about Qi's seafood when the servants return. This time, they carry a bronze vessel of unusual shape, something like a steamer, but more ornate. Dragon and cloud patterns cover the surface. The lid is removed. a cloud of fragrant steam escapes. Inside, layers of meat are stacked neatly, separated by broad green leaves. Gentun, the young man explains. Steamed young pork, slow cooked for 2 hours. The meat falls apart but holds its shape. Tun means piglet. Steaming, as a technique, is considered refined. Not every cook can manage it well. You tear off a small piece, it is astonishingly tender, almost dissolving on your tongue. The seasoning is different from the lamb, less salty, with a faint warmth that might be wine. Apparently, the meat was cooked with alcohol. By now, your stomach is perhaps half full, but you sense this meal has barely started. At a formal, noble banquet in this era, meat dishes alone can number a dozen or more. You've had 2. From the corner of the hall comes a rhythmic clinking of metal. You turn and see servants working beside a row of ding of various sizes, the largest as tall as a man, the smallest the size of a basin. Every one is bubbling over charcoal. This is the moment you truly understand what the ding means in a spring and autumn kitchen. In our time, cooking uses specialized equipment, woks, stock pots, steamers, pressure cookers. 25 centuries ago, none of these exist. Cooking relies on 2 main vessels. The first is the gay, a 3-legged vessel, usually ceramic or bronze, with hollow legs that allow heat to rise inside, mainly used for boiling porridge and soup. The second is the ding, also 3-legged, or sometimes 4, but with solid legs and a larger body. The ding is the all-purpose pot. It stews meat, simmers vegetables, renders broth. With a zang, a perforated insert placed over its mouth, it can even steam. But the ding's true significance is not culinary. It is political. You know the phrase, Wen Ding Zhong Yuan, to inquire about the ding of the Central Plains. The story goes that King Zhuang of Chu, after establishing his dominance, sent an envoy to the Zhou court to ask about the size and weight of the 9 ding. This was understood immediately as a veiled threat. Questioning the ding was questioning the king's right to rule. A Zhou minister rebuked the envoy sharply. The weight of the ding is not something you may ask about. King Zhuang withdrew his question, but the message had been delivered. In daily life, the number and size of a family's ding, the patterns carved on their surfaces, the ancestors' deeds inscribed along the rim, all of these are markers of identity. Some families pass their ding down through generations, the way others might preserve a title deed or a family crest. You are sitting in a room full of power, and the ding are part of it. The Peoren speaks. The Lu Huo is ready. His voice is not loud, but the hall quiets at once. Every face turns toward him. Lu Huo venison stew, a thick, rich preparation somewhere between a soup and a braise. Meat cut into small pieces, simmered with seasonings until everything melds. Whole meat stew is one of the most important dishes at a formal banquet. It is always prepared by the head chef personally. The young man leans in, anticipating your question. Lu means deer. Wild game is a significant part of the noble diet. Aristocratic families organize regular hunts. The catch deer, wild boar, hare, pheasant returns to the household kitchen. Wild game falls outside the strict ding hierarchy, so eating it carries less political weight. You can enjoy your venison without worrying too much about protocol. Among wild meats, deer is considered the finest. Tender flesh, clean flavor, a hint of something woodsy and wild. Boar is less prized, tougher, coarser, requiring long cooking. A ceramic bowl is placed before you. The stew is dark brown, with a thin layer of golden fat floating on the surface. A few flecks of green scallion are scattered across the top. You take a spoonful. The flavor is immediate and startling. A deep, concentrated richness, the essence of slow-cooked venison, no gamey sharpness. The broth is seasoned with something you can't identify. Not peppercorn, not anise, not anything you recognize. It adds depth without announcing itself. The salt level is perfect, just enough to keep pulling you back for another sip. You take 2 more spoonfuls, set the bowl down, exhale. Across the hall, you notice something. A woman in elaborate robes, one of the few female guests, reaches into her sleeve and produces a small ceramic jar. She opens it, dips a thin pick inside, and sprinkles a white powder into her stew. The quiet gentleman notices your curiosity. "Yi Tang," he says softly. "Malt sugar. Lady Zhao doesn't care for heavily salted food. She always brings her own sweetener. Yi Tang maltose is the most common sweetener of this era, made by fermenting sprouted barley with grain. Amber-colored, sticky, milder than modern white sugar, but with a distinctive fragrance. Sugar, in any form, is expensive in this period. Most people never taste it. The fact that Lady Zhao carries her own supply speaks both to her high status and her particular palate. You look down at your own bowl of venison stew and feel a brief, unreasonable reluctance to finish it, but you do. The servants bring wine. Small bronze vessels appear on each guest's stand. These are Zhu wine cups of a distinctive shape, 3 legs, a pointed spout at the front, a raised tail at the back, 2 small pillars rising from the rim. The overall form suggests a bird about to take flight. Inside the Zhu, a pale amber liquid. The smell is faintly sweet, faintly sour, with the unmistakable warmth of fermented grain. This is wine as the spring and autumn period knows it. By this era, brewing is already well developed. The main varieties include Lao, a cloudy, unfiltered grain wine for daily drinking; Pei, a sweet, mild rice wine suitable for women and elders; and Qingju, filtered clear wine, reserved for important occasions. From the color and fragrance of yours, this appears to be Qingju, the good stuff. You reach for the cup, and a hand catches your wrist. gently but firmly. Wait, the quiet gentleman murmurs. The jiju hasn't been performed. Jiju, the wine libation. Before anyone drinks at a formal banquet, a portion must first be offered to the spirits and ancestors. A small amount of wine poured onto the ground. This is not optional. Skipping it would be considered deeply disrespectful. You watch the host. He rises, lifts his jue, bows toward the north, toward the ancestral tablets. He dips the little finger of his right hand into the wine and flicks a few drops onto the floor. Then, and only then, does he drink. The guests follow. You imitate the gesture dip, flick, bow, and finally raise the cup to your lips. The first thing you notice is the strength, or rather, the lack of it. This wine is considerably weaker than modern beer or grape wine, closer to a lightly fermented rice drink, soft, warm. The second thing is the taste. Not sharp, not acidic, a gentle, rounded sweetness, almost soothing. It slides down your throat and settles in your chest like a small, quiet flame. But low alcohol does not mean low risk. Drinking at a spring and autumn banquet is a landscape of invisible rules. How much you drink, when you drink, with whom you drink, every detail carries meaning. If the host offers you wine, you must finish your cup. If a peer offers, a small sip shows acceptance. If you offer wine to someone and they refuse to drink, it is a public insult. The seating order matters. Higher-ranking guests toast lower-ranking ones first. Then the lower-ranking guests reciprocate. This exchange is called chuzhuo. Getting the sequence wrong marks you as someone who does not understand Li ritual propriety. A minor error brings whispered mockery. A major one brings open embarrassment. And though the wine is mild, the impurities are high. Without distillation technology, the congeners in this wine are plentiful. The hangover, people say, is considerably worse than what modern spirits produce. You take 2 careful sips and set the Jew down. A second round of wine arrives. This one is darker, deep amber, almost brown. The smell is richer, more complex. Yu Chang, the quiet gentleman says, brewed from black millet, scented with Eugean grass. It is normally reserved for royal sacrifices. But the Zhao family is celebrating something significant tonight. Yu Chang is a ceremonial wine of high status within Zhou dynasty ritual. It appears only at the most solemn occasions, a king's sacrifice to heaven, a lord's offering to his ancestors. That the Zhao family is serving it to banquet guests suggests this evening is no ordinary dinner. You taste it. Stronger than the first wine, a layered herbal fragrance the Eugean grass weaves through the grain sweetness, mellow, warming, with a finish that lingers. 2 cups of wine in and your head is beginning to float. This is not ideal. The banquet is far from over. You quietly set down your jouet and concentrate on the food. New dishes have appeared on your stand, not meat this time. Small plates of what appear to be condiments. One plate holds a yellow-brown paste, shiny with oil, salty smelling. Another holds a grayish-white powder. A third contains finely chopped green herbs. You dip a fingertip into the paste. Salty, very salty. And underneath the salt, a fermented depth, something aged and concentrated. That's high, the young man says, seeing your expression. Meat sauce, made from fish or beef, salted and fermented. It goes with everything. High is one of the most essential condiments of this era. Meat is chopped fine, mixed heavily with salt, and left to ferment. The result is intensely savory. A tiny amount transforms a bland dish. In a time without soy sauce, without MSG, when even salt itself is costly, high is the flavor backbone of the noble kitchen. The gray-white powder turns out to be May-Fen dried plum powder, ground from green plums. You touch a pinch to your tongue. The sourness hits you like a slap. Your eyes water. Your mouth puckers involuntarily. It's as sharp as an unripe lemon. But after the initial shock passes, you notice something. The greasy coating left by the lamb and pork, the rich, heavy residue of all that meat, has been cut clean. Your palate feels refreshed. This is the quiet wisdom of ancient seasoning. Without our modern range of spices and sauces, spring and autumn cooks worked resourcefully with what they had. Salt, high, May, and beyond these, Jiang ginger, essential for taming the gamey flavors of meat. Confucius himself reportedly said, "I will not eat a meal without ginger." Jiao Sichuan peppercorn, not the chili pepper that won't arrive in China for another 2,000 years, carried from the Americas during the Ming Dynasty. This jiao is the native peppercorn, numbing, fragrant, warming. Xie, a plant similar to garlic, though milder and less pungent. True garlic, the story goes, came back with Zhang Qian from his famous mission to the western regions long after this era. Kong scallion, then as now, the faithful companion of almost every Chinese dish. Zhuyu, a plant with a sharp, biting flavor. Before chili peppers existed, Zhuyu was one of the main sources of heat in Chinese cooking. The 5 flavors of this period, sour, sweet, bitter, pungent, salty, do not include what we think of as spicy. The la of this era means the sharp bite of ginger, garlic, and zhuyu. The burning heat of chili peppers is an experience still 2 millennia away. A new plate arrives. Translucent slices arranged in neat rows on a bronze tray, white-pink, faintly glistening, dusted with fine herbs. You lean close. It looks like raw fish. Yu kwai, the quiet gentleman says. Fresh yellow river carp, sliced thin as cicada wings, dipped in ginger sauce. This is one of Jin's most celebrated preparations. You pick up a slice. The fish is impeccably fresh, a clean, faint sweetness, with a texture that is both soft and resilient. The ginger dipping sauce, sharp, bright, slightly hot, erases any hint of fishiness and leaves only the pure, clear taste of the fish itself. You eat 2 more slices before pausing to appreciate what just happened. Raw fish, served with precision and care 2,500 years ago. This is not a Japanese invention. This is Chinese and ancient. You kuai, what we might translate as fish slices, is, in this period, a high prestige dish. Not because the ingredients are rare, but because the technique demands perfection. The fish must be alive until the moment of preparation. The knife must be extraordinarily sharp. The slices must be thin enough to see light through. The sauce must complement without overwhelming. The entire process, from killing to plating, is done in a single unbroken sequence. No hesitation, no margin for error. Confucius said, "Kuai bouillon shi times sliced fish cannot be too fine." This phrase later evolved into a well-known idiom. Shi bouillon jing, kuai bouillon shi times food should be as refined as possible, fish slices as thin as possible. A philosophy of culinary precision that endured for centuries. In truth, raw freshwater fish remained common in China well into the Song dynasty. It faded eventually, mainly because freshwater fish carry a higher risk of parasites than ocean fish. Modern sashimi, as eaten in Japan, is primarily saltwater fish, a somewhat different proposition. But here, tonight, in a hall lit by bronze lamps in the state of Jin, you are eating raw carp, and it is wonderful. You are quietly hoping the next course will be more predictable. It is not. A plate arrives carrying small, golden brown, curled shapes, clearly fried. Clearly, not meat, not fish, not vegetable. You look closer. Silkworm pupae, fried in hot oil until crisp, the quiet gentleman says, completely unfazed. Sprinkled with fine salt, a technique from Lu, originally, developed by silkworm farming families, later adopted by noble kitchens. You stare for a moment, then you pick one up and eat it. Crisp, genuinely crisp. The texture is not unlike a puffed rice cracker. The flavor is savory, concentrated, with a richness you can't quite categorize. If you don't think about what it is, it's actually quite good. The young man reappears beside you, delighted. In Lu, silkworm pupae are an 800-mile delicacy. They say the Duke of Zhou himself included them in the list of offerings for the silkworm goddess. Silk production in this era is one of the most important industries in China. Silk is as valuable as gold, the exclusive fabric of the aristocracy. Silkworm pupae, as a byproduct of silk making, were naturally repurposed as food. In truth, the spring and autumn diet includes a wider range of insects than you might expect. Grasshoppers, bee larvae, cicada nymphs, all are eaten. They're high in protein, easy to gather, and in times of scarcity, genuinely important. For nobles, eating insects is more about novelty and variety. For common people, It's about survival. The ancients, it seems, were considerably more relaxed about eating insects than we are. When locusts swarmed, you ate locusts. When silkworm pupae were plentiful, you ate pupae. It was considered natural, sensible, in harmony with the seasons. Scholars continue to debate how widespread insect eating was across the various states. Some believe it was regional. Others, noting the traces of insect preparation found on cooking vessels from many different sites, suggest it may have been more common than the written record admits. You eat 2 more pupae, then a third. You are, to your mild surprise, developing a taste for them. Before you can reach for a fourth, the plate is whisked away. Something new takes its place. Dark, square-cut pieces of dried meat, arranged on a fine ceramic dish. Niu Fu, the quiet gentleman says. His tone shifts, becomes more formal. The Zhao family has truly spared nothing tonight. Niu Fu, beef jerky. Your memory catches up. Beef, in this era, is the most exalted of all meats. Cattle are essential working animals. They plow, they haul. Slaughtering one requires official sanction. Beef appears only at the most solemn sacrificial rites, and only the highest-ranking individuals, the king, or a lord with express permission, may eat it. The Zhao family, powerful as they are, holds the rank of Qing Dafu High Minister, not sovereign. How can they serve beef? The quiet gentleman reads your hesitation. This is Zuoro, he says, lowering his voice. Meat consecrated at last year's temple sacrifice, then distributed to meritorious retainers. It is permitted. Zuoro sacrificial meat. After the ritual offering, the sacred meat is divided among those who participated. Receiving a portion is an honor. It signifies that you hold a place in the Lord's regard. You take a piece. It's dense and chewy, true jerky, dried and preserved, salty, with a thread of smoke. Compared to the tender stewed lamb and the silky steamed pork, this is not the most pleasant thing you've eaten tonight. But you understand, it isn't really about flavor. It's about what the meat represents. Power, status, proof that the Zhao family stands close to the center of things. The quiet gentleman speaks again at some point about the differences between states and their kitchens. Qi, the coastal kingdom, is famous for seafood and complex sauces. Duke Huan's table was said to be laden with clams, abalone, and ocean fish, dressed in seasonings of startling variety. Chu, in the humid Yangtze Basin, favors bold, pungent flavors. Without chili peppers, the cooks of Chu rely heavily on juyu, jiao, and ginger. Chu cuisine also has a notable sweet streak, more honey and malt sugar than other states. Qin, on the northwest frontier, eats simply. Large portions, lamb, beef, coarse grains. Quantity over refinement. Only later, as Qin grows powerful, do more sophisticated cooking methods arrive from the east. Jin, where you sit tonight, occupies a middle position, balanced, both rough and refined. The people of Jin love lamb and wine. Their banquet culture is elaborate. Lu, the home of the Duke of Zhou and, later, Confucius, is the most ritually precise. In Lu, the importance of food lies not in how it tastes, but in how it is prepared, presented, and served. Every detail follows protocol. Confucius's famous line times food should be as refined as possible. Fish slices as thin as possible times captures the Lu approach. It is not about pleasure, it is about correctness. The banquet's rhythm changes. In the center of the hall, servants are setting up what appears to be a portable cooking station, a small hearth, an iron rack, ceramic bowls of raw ingredients. Xianji, the quiet gentleman explains. The final grand dish, prepared live. You watch. The Paoren takes a long iron fork and begins placing thin slices of meat and chunks of marinated fish over the open flame. Fat drips into the fire. The sizzle fills the hall. A wave of smoke and fragrance rolls outward. This is, unmistakably, a barbecue. The image reminds you, with a small jolt of recognition, of something entirely modern. A yakiniku restaurant, a Korean grill, the ancient and the contemporary, meeting over an open flame. When your portion arrives, skewered lamb kidney, charred on the outside, pink and tender within. Dusted with salt, you bite into it and close your eyes. Simple, direct. The high heat has sealed the juices inside. The salt draws out the natural flavor. No complicated sauce, no elaborate technique. Just fire, meat, and patience. The young man materializes beside you once more. Did you know that Yi Yin became prime minister through his cooking? You've heard the name Yi Yin, a legendary figure from the early Shang dynasty. He began as a household cook, the story goes, and ended as the most powerful minister in the kingdom. Shang Tang heard about his skill and came to recruit him personally, the young man says, warming to the subject. Yi Yin won him over with both his cooking and his ideas about governance. They say he invented several famous dishes, though the recipes are all lost now. There is another famous story. Pao Dingji knew the cook who could butcher an ox with supernatural grace. His knife moved through the joints and sinews as if dancing, finding the natural gaps, never forcing, never straining. When asked how he achieved this, Pao Ding said he had come to understand the structure of the animal so completely that he no longer needed to see it. He worked by feel, by intuition, by alignment with the nature of the thing itself. The philosopher Zhuangzi used this story to illustrate the Taoist principle of Wu Wei, acting in harmony with nature rather than against it. But from another angle, it tells us something about how cooks were regarded in this era. A butcher, a man who cuts meat for a living, is held up as a model of wisdom. This speaks to a level of respect for the craft that our modern world does not always match. The great Paoren of the spring and autumn period were not simply cooks, They were expected to understand ingredients, seasons, regional sourcing, ritual protocol, and even medicine, since the balance of a person's diet was believed to directly affect their health. In this sense, a household pairin was something like a private chef, a nutritionist, and a wellness consultant combined into one. Music fills the hall. The entertainments have begun dancers in bright silk, musicians with bronze bells and stone chimes. The formal portion of the evening softens into something warmer, more relaxed. You lean back on your mat. Your legs have gone completely numb, but you hardly notice. Somewhere during the evening, you participated in the xiangshu, the formal cycle of toasting. The host offered wine to the guests. This is xian. The guests returned the toast. This is chu. The host toasted again in gratitude. This is zhou. 3 rounds, minimum. Then came lushou, sequential toasting among all guests, by rank. Then wusuanju, uncounted cups, free drinking, the atmosphere finally loosening. By now, your head is floating gently. You lean against a pillar and listen to 2 older guests conversing nearby. This year's wine isn't as mellow as last year's. Last year's was a 3-year vintage. This year, only 1. The new juguan doesn't know how to select. Being a juguan is thankless work. Choose badly, and you're scolded. Brew badly, and you're punished. Juguan, the wine official. In a great household of this era, even winemaking has its own dedicated officer. In truth, every function has its specialist. The shanzai manages the kitchen. The jiuguan oversees brewing and selection. The murin tends livestock. The linrin manages the storehouses. A single, noble family might employ 100 household officers, less like a family, more like a small government. The evening winds down. Guests begin to take their leave, one by one. Each must first approach the host, bow, and express thanks. You join the queue, heart beating a little fast, and manage a bow that is probably adequate. You murmur something in what you hope passes for archaic formal speech. The host nods. You survive. Outside, the cold air strikes your face. Your head clears. The wine haze lifts a little. Above you, a sky you have never seen before. Without electric light, without pollution, the stars are absurdly, impossibly thick. A dense, luminous river flowing across the darkness. You stop walking and simply look. A distant dog barks. Farther off, the slow beat of a night drum. A servant approaches and hands you a small bundle wrapped in oiled cloth. Inside, dried meat and pressed grain cakes. Leftovers from the banquet, packed for the road. Lukai, the servant says, road food for the journey home, in case you grow hungry. Road food. 2,500 years ago, and they already had takeaway. You walk. The path home is dark and quiet. The sounds of the banquet fade behind you. Ahead, nothing but starlight and the soft crunch of earth under your feet, you think about what you ate tonight. Rice that marked you as privileged, millet that fed an entire civilization, bean porridge that kept the poor alive, salt that was worth more than a day's labor, lamb stewed and roasted, pork steamed until it melted, venison simmered into something extraordinary, raw carp sliced to translucency, silkworm pupae crisp and golden, beef jerky that carried the weight of ritual and rank, condiments made from fermented meat, powdered plum and ginger, wine brewed from millet and scented with grass, all of it eaten with bare hands, kneeling on a mat in firelight. You think about the ding, those great bronze vessels that were both cooking pots and symbols of power, about the pauren who commanded respect alongside officials, about the rules that governed every bite and every sip, linking food to politics, to ancestry, to the cosmic order itself. No refrigerators, no stoves, no seasoning bottles lined up on a shelf, and yet a cuisine of real sophistication, a culture built around the table with the same care others might give to a temple. The oiled cloth bundle in your sleeve is still warm. You reach in and break off a piece of grain cake. It's dry and plain, but after everything you've eaten tonight, its simplicity feels like a kind of kindness. The stars have shifted. The night is deep. The road ahead is long, and your legs are tired not from walking, but from all that kneeling. You are full, genuinely, thoroughly full. The cold air carries the faint scent of charcoal smoke from somewhere far away. Someone else's hearth, someone else's dinner, the ordinary smell of ordinary life, going on as it always has, people feeding themselves and each other with whatever they have, in whatever era they find themselves. That, perhaps, is the thread that connects you to the people in that hall tonight, and to everyone who came before and everyone who will come after. The need to eat well, to eat together, to make something good from what the world provides. Your footsteps slow. The stars are very bright. The night is very still. And now you, too, can rest. Let the feast settle. Let the fire go out. The road home is quiet, and the bed at the end of it is soft. Good night. May your rest be deep, your dreams well seasoned, and your morning, when it comes, as simple and good as a warm bowl of rice.